And we're back for PFL Europe number 2 here in 2025 from Brussels. We've got a main event between Patrick Habirora and Danny Roberts again from Belgium. Co-main event, Taylor Lapilus makes his PFL debut, taking on Ali Taleb, and there are 16 total fights on this PFL Belgium card here on Saturday. Of course, this is the second of 2 PFL cards this week, the first of which being PFL MENA. We broke down and predicted that entire card yesterday on the channel. That is linked in the description down below, so go subscribe as well here on the channel for more weekly MMA content. We're going to do more with the PFL and the UFC once we hit 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, which we're about 50 away from right now, so make sure to get that done. Again, hit that subscribe button down below. We're gonna have different type of content again once we hit 1,000 subscribers. Okay, and also on the main channel, Greedo plays daily MLB best bets. Okay, on to the first of our 16 fights today, kicking things off with a matchup between 2 fighters who are 1-0 and 1-1 respectively in the welterweight division. We've got Salvo Giudice taking on Bryce Belghazi. First of all, like PFL MENA, there are no odds for this card. I can't find any betting lines. Normally, these for PFL Europe will kind of come up right before the fight. It's rare you find lines for PFL MENA, but anyways, yeah, you usually don't get PFL Europe lines until right before the fight actually happens, or right the day before. Anyways, Salvo Giudice versus Bryce Belghazi here. I'm gonna go with the 1-0 fighter here in Salvo Giudice. You got Giudice, who's 1-0 professionally, fought a lot on the amateur scene, won his first fight in PFL Europe last year in December. It's a unanimous decision victory over Attila Kobas. On the flip side, Bryce Belghazi, 1-1, but in PFL, he's 0-1, losing to Ion Sheridan back in December of 2024. I don't entirely know why this fight's been made, but I'm going to take the guy who's actually won a fight before, okay? Again, some of these fights are difficult to predict because there's not much to base the prediction off of, and you'll see throughout the course of this video and throughout the course of this card, we are going to get some fights and some fighters that are definitely expected to win. How our next fight is 100% in one of those. But in this one, I am going to go with Salvo to win. Both these fighters from France. I believe Salvo's the bigger guy, if I'm not mistaken. His last fight, I think, was at catchweight 177. Again, not much to base this prediction off of. This is a fight that ultimately doesn't really matter. It's the first fight on the prelims, and I'm going to go with Salvo Giudice to win the fight by unanimous decision. Okay. On to some more meaningful fights. I guess this one is kind of meaningful. Poliana Wisniewska taking on Jessica Cunha here. I don't get why this fight's happening. Because here's the thing, guys. And I know there is no PFL Europe women's 125 division. Okay, they have not done a very good job keeping their champions active and, making us care about their champions. And I think a great example of that is definitely Dakota Ditcheva, who is the PFL Women's 125 champion. She didn't fight in the season this year, and she's going to take on Sumiko Anaba in a couple weeks in Cape Town, South Africa. And that's great, but it's just like, why is she not having more meaningful fights? Why isn't Poliana Wisniewska in the actual PFL season? I get it. She's still very green. She's 26 years of age, and she's only 5-0. What is she doing better than that? Okay, this one I guess makes a little more sense because she is only 5-0. You want to give her another year in PFL Europe to just win some fights and then move on to the actual PFL season, because we just saw Simeon Powell lose to Antonio Carlos Jr. last week, and that's the guy who got promoted from obviously fighting in PFL Europe. We saw Jakob Neto have a lot of trouble going from PFL Europe to the main PFL stage. Anyways, Poliana Wisniewska is the reigning PFL Europe 125-pound champion. Her run to the belt wasn't the best. Well, okay, what do you want her to do? She beat all the fighters that they put in front of her. She beats a 4-5 D. Beagley, a 12-5 Carolina Wojcik, and then she beats 3-3 Valentina Scatizzi for the championship by first round knockout at actually 20 seconds. I will give Wisniewska that. She hits pretty hard for the weight class, even though I think that's her only knockout win of her career. It is. No, she's got 2. She knocked out D. Beagley as well. I don't know where they found Jessica Cunha. I legitimately don't. She fought Julia Pilastri back in 2020, if that matters. She's got a fight back 2 fights ago. She hasn't fought, by the way, since 2022. 2 fights ago for her, though, back in November of 2022 for the Campanella Fight Combat Championship. She was supposed to fight Juliana Rodriguez. On Tapology, there's a question mark because nobody's reported the result to that fight. Results unknown. So maybe her record's 9-4, maybe it's not. Her last win's over a 2-1 fighter by 17-second rear naked choke. What are we doing? I'm going to take Poliana Wisniewska. Again, I don't know where PFL finds these fighters sometimes. I'm going to go with Wisniewska to win the fight by first round TKO. I think they're slowly building her to actually fight on the main PFL stage. They should probably get her back in there for the final PFL Europe card of the year. And what? They don't even have that scheduled right now. Wow. They're actually, no, they have to have 2 more PFL Europes, I believe. So they should get her back in there one more time before the year's end, and then maybe she actually fights in the actual PFL season. Regardless, though, I'm going to go with the Polish fighter and Poliana Wisniewska to beat Jessica Cunha by first round TKO. Third fight of the night. We move now to a tournament fight in the bantamweight division. I believe this is an actual fight, not an alternate fight. Dean Garrett taking on Tomas Gronvall. I don't know why this fight's so low on the card because the other tournament fights are, the very top of the card. I don't get it. But Garnett, excuse me if I said Garrett earlier, coming into this fight with a 12-3-1 professional record. Originally, this was supposed to be Garnett versus Alexander Luster. They tried to put that fight together twice. Obviously, the first time they tried to put that fight together, the entire card got canceled. Then Luster got injured prior to this fight. So now it's Gronvall who gets the shot instead. For Garnett, this is a guy who has fought some decent fighters, lost to Lewis McGrillen Evans last year in PFL Europe, lost to Magomed Magomedov way back in the day in ACB. He has only won 1 fight since 2023, but booked against multiple guys, got the McGrillen Evans fight, lost it. Now he gets Tomas Gronvall, who I'm just going to be honest is not on his level. This is an easy win for Garnett, who I know still has not won in the PFL. Tomas Gronvall I don't think is good at all. Garnett's a veteran. He's 36 years of age, so sure, again, age will catch up to him sometime, but Gronvall has lost 3 of his last 4 fights, with the only victory being a win against a 3-1 fighter back in 2024. When he's risen to this PFL Bellator stage, he's lost. Again, tough fight against Khurshid Kaharov, don't get me wrong, got finished in the 3rd round. Lost to the undefeated Syrian Clark by unanimous decision. However, though, he was thrown out to get slaughtered in those fights, and that kind of shows you what the PFL thinks of him. He fought Wilson Hayes back in Cage Warriors on New Year's Eve 2022, lost the fight. His only victories recently have been against a 4-8 fighter in 2023 and a 3-1 fighter in 2024. It kind of just goes to show where he's at and the lack of how high the PFL thinks of the guy. I'm taking Dean Garnett to win the fight. I think he's the all-around better fighter. Gronvall, I think, is going to be able to hang with him a little bit on the ground. On the feet, though, that's where Garnett should really take advantage and really just pull away with this one. I'm going Dean Garrett to beat Tomas the Tank Engine Gronvall. I'm going with England over Finland here, and I think Garnett will get it done by unanimous decision. Moving on now to our 4th fight of the night. It is another one in the bantamweight division. Not a bad fight at all. Movsar Ibragimov takes on Gerardo Fanny in this fight. Ibragimov's not bad. 6-0 from Belgium, as we're going to see a lot of Belgian talent on this card. His opponent's the Dutch, I believe. Yes, the Dutch fighter in Gerardo Fanny. Fanny's fought in PFL, has not fought in PFL before, but has fought in Cage Warriors multiple times. Had 6 fights over there, went 3-3. For Ibragimov, this is his first big step up in competition. He had been fighting recently in Arena Elite Championship, which is a promotion in Belgium that we're actually going to get to in a second with the fighter who actually main evented the last card Ibragimov was on. But this is a guy who's a pretty explosive fighter. He showed in his last fight, okay, he can get submission victories, but also he is a flashy striker who throws a lot at you. Head kick knockout earlier in the year in 2025. This is not a bad fighter at all. He's got a 100% finish rate so far in 6 pro fights. And for Fanny, his opponent, not a bad fighter. However, the trend I have seen with him for the most part is once he fights actual legit fighters, he loses. I mean, you might recognize Jack Cartwright on his record back in 2020. Cartwright subbed him in about 2 minutes for the Cage Warriors Championship. When Fanny recently takes on fighters like Alan Spiridon, who's an 0-2 guy, he beats them. Beat an 0-0 fighter in his last fight. We look at his losses recently. Sean Marcos de Silva, 5-0 fighter in Cage Warriors. Aaron Abbey, a 12-4-1 fighter in Cage Warriors as well. So when he steps up and actually takes on decent competition, Fanny usually loses, and he usually gets beat on the ground. Ibragimov has a ground game. You saw the guillotine choke in his last fight that won him the fight, obviously, and I think he'll likely submit Fanny in this fight too. Again, Cartwright subbed Fanny in the first round. We've seen Fanny submitted multiple times early in fights. I think we're going to see the same exact outcome here. Ibragimov gets it going for the Belgian fighters tonight or on Saturday. I'm going to take him to win this fight over Gerardo Fanny. I believe he gets it done by first round submission. We move on now to our next fight in the welterweight division. Another fighter from Belgium. And this is the fighter who was main eventing the last card that Ibragimov was on. It is Hamzat Borz Abaev. Yep. Same nickname as Hamzat Chimaev. Name, I mean, nothing the guy can do about this. His name's just like Hamzat. It's Hamzat Abaev instead of Hamzat Chimaev. However, though, yes, Hamzat Borz Abaev is fighting Chiquina Noso Pedro. Noso Pedro is a guy who's fought in PFL before, took on Ibrahim Mane back in 2024, lost a close fight. I thought Mane got the win, and Mane did by split decision. Since then, won a fight in Brave against a 4-0 guy. I personally don't think the Dutch Angolan fighter's that bad. I think it's a guy who's a decent regional talent. I do just think this is kind of a tough fight for him, though, against, you're taking on a guy who's fighting in his home country. He's an undefeated guy in Abaev. I do think it's a little bit of trouble for Noso Pedro, who I believe he's a little older. I don't know. Tapology doesn't have his age listed. I believe he's in his late 30s. I could be wrong with that one, but I'm pretty sure he is. Abaev, 28 years of age. He is undefeated. His last two fights were against the same guy. Beat Marcelo Yuri back-to-back in AEC, which is a little weird. But I do think he steps up to the competition here, steps up to the plate. His last two wins over the guy were both in a minute. And one was in 40 seconds, the other one was in 60 seconds. I think he beats Noso Pedro. Noso Pedro's a guy who's only been finished once on the feet. We saw Mane win a split decision, a close fight over him. I do think Abaev wins, and if he's going to win, I likely think it will be via knockout. So I'm going to go with the Belgian fighter to win by first round KO. Again, I just think Noso Pedro is, he's lost, 4 times already. He's 9-4. Florem Zendelli knocked him out in 2022. I think Hamzat Abaev is able to get a finish as well. I'm going again with Borz to win the fight by first round knockout. Let's move now to the featherweight division. Adam Meskini takes on his opponent Tiziano, the golden boy, Ferranti in this one. We've got France taking on Italy. For Meskini, this is a 9-3 fighter who has fought in the PFL before. He fought in PFL MENA back in 2024, losing to Islam Reda in the first round of the tournament, then getting a feature bout or a showcase fight in his next one, beating Yacid Hasnain by split decision. Meskini now has been promoted to PFL Europe. Again, no disrespect to PFL MENA. I personally hold PFL Europe to a higher regard. I don't know where PFL Pacific is going to land, which is just the Oceanic PFL region thing that they're doing next year. PFL Africa is a thing too. Well, they're going to have 5. I just need to see the talent in PFL Africa. If I had to guess, I'm going to be honest, I think the talent's going to go... I think it's probably going to go, obviously, main PFL, PFL Europe. I would guess PFL Pacific, PFL Africa, and then MENA, I think. I don't know. I have to watch the type of fighters they get in PFL Africa. I haven't really started... Well, I have seen some of the guys, but we'll see. Again, I got to watch that full card and how they treat the card, honestly. Anyways, MENA is definitely last, just because it doesn't seem like PFL really cares much about MENA. Regardless, Adam Meskini takes on Tiziano Ferranti. Ferranti, the Italian, is 10-1. The only loss being to Jordan Vucenic, who obviously we know how good that guy is. I don't know if I think he's still in the UFC. I hope he is. I know he just lost to Chris Duncan. Regardless, though, that's Ferranti's only loss. The only knock on him is that he hasn't really beaten a good fighter. He's 25 years of age from Italy. Again, hasn't beaten a really good fighter yet. A lot of his wins are just against nobodies. And then when he got to fight Vucenic, it was a fight he's a plus 400 dog in, but when he got to fight Vucenic, he lost. Now, I am going to pick him to win, though, because I don't think Meskini's that great. Now, you see that loss in PFL MENA. Islam Reda's a really good fighter. I've seen Islam Reda fight. I don't believe... Oh, yeah, he made it to the next round because he was originally booked to fight Abdullah Al-Kantani in the last PFL Mana card. Ended up getting that fight switched out. Regardless, though, that's a good name. Reda's a good fighter, and that's not a bad loss for Meskini at all. But then beating Yazid Hussein by split decision is just... That's where I kind of go, eh. Because Hussein's a 3-3 fighter. Al-Kantani knocked him out in the second round. Lost in UAE Warriors, his last fight. And sure, Meskini picks up the win, but if you're barely getting by that guy, I can't really treat you all that seriously. And I don't think Ferranti's the best, but I do think his striking is going to be enough to win this one, and I do think he's going to see, again, an advantage on the feet. So I'm going to go with the Italian, Tiziano, the golden boy, Ferranti, to win this fight over the French Adam Meskini. Again, Ferranti, I think, can get it done by unanimous decision. Let's move on now to the bantamweight division. I don't know where they found these guys, but here we are. Fadi Khaled taking on Levy Batchelor in this one. I'm going to go with the Welsh fighter in Levy to pick up the win. I think, yeah. Just because Fadi Khaled, I believe, is just a kickboxer, if I'm not mistaken. He's had 2 pro MMA fights. They're against absolute nobodies. And sure, Levy Batchelor hasn't beaten a single soul ever either. His only professional fights have went over a 2-15 Ash Williams. I will say this, though. Levy Batchelor did fight on the Cage Warriors Amateur Series, and he fought quite a bit over there. Again, doesn't mean the most, but it just does show, okay, this is a guy, if you're fighting in, Cage Warriors, the Cage Warriors amateur scene, he was the Cage Warriors, I believe, amateur champion at one point in time. That does prove to me, okay, you are somewhat of a serious prospect. Just because it's not like you're fighting on random regionals or you're a former pro kickboxer. No, like you have actually been at this for a while. You've main evented, if you want to call it that, the Cage Warriors Academy cards, which I don't even know if they're televised. I think they're just on YouTube, right? I think. But that does prove to me, okay, like you are somewhat of a serious prospect. And sure, he's got 2 wins, but one of them's against a guy with no Tapology page. His last win's over a 2-15 Ash Williams, who's now 2-22, good lord. But he went in there and did what he needed to do, won the fight by first round TKO. This is a guy I believe that the PFL sees and they treat like a legitimate prospect, a guy who is trying to rise the ranks right now. And I look at his opponent here in the Tunisian Fadi Khaled, who has won 2 fights, not an all-round mixed martial arts fighter. I would think lacks a serious ground game. Even though both of his wins I believe are on the ground so far, but again, he's fighting 1-0 and 0-2 fighters. Levy Batchelor is not bad on the ground. He's picked up multiple submissions, and again, he's been able to find ground and pound victories recently and early in his career too. I think this is a first round TKO. I think it is going to be a ground and pound finish for him. I think there's a takedown involved and then just a beating on the ground. I'm going to go with the 1-0 Welsh fighter to win, again, by first round TKO. Let's move on now to our next fight. It is in the featherweight division. We've got a former UFC fighter here in Gaetano Pirrello taking on Salvatore Liga. 2 Belgian fighters going at it here. I think Pirello's actually a little bit undervalued in this spot. Again, I don't know what the odds are going to be yet for this card because they just don't exist right now. I actually think there is decent value on Pirrello, who I think might be an underdog, or this fight at least might be close in terms of the odds. Pirrello, was it an undeserved UFC stint? It kind of was. He hadn't beaten anybody, had lost hadn't fought in like 2 years, gets into the promotion, had only won 2 of his last 3, and they throw him right in there with Ricky Simone. And I was like, all right, the hell do you want the guy to do? Simone took him down and subbed him obviously very quickly. And they gave him D Silva. He had to fight Douglas Silva de Andrade, and obviously Douglas Silva de Andrade went in there and knocked him out in the first round. So I don't think it was a bad stint. He just fought guys that were way better than him. Again, the Simone fight was short notice, and D Silva was a pretty sizable favorite to go out there and beat the guy. Pirrello obviously gets cut, comes back in 2023, wins a fight by unanimous decision. He's fought once since the D Silva loss back in October of 2021. That's not ideal, sure. But I look at Salvatore Liga, who is undefeated. He's 5-0. I don't think he's a good 5-0. We'll look at his wins. 2 of them are in Cage Warriors, but they're against a 1-0 and 0-0 guy. And then it's just a bunch of randoms, 1-1, 2 into his last win. And the guy, by the way, guys, this guy's fought once since 2021 as well. So both Pirrello and Liga have not been active. Liga's one fight since 2021 was earlier this year in February, where he beat a 3-4 fighter by rear naked choke in 20 seconds. And sure, that's where Pirrello leaves a lot to be desired. I understand this with the ground game. But if he's able to keep this fight standing, I think he's going to win. I'm going to take the former UFC fighter here in Gaetano Pirrello to win by unanimous decision. Again, both fighters from Belgium. Pirrello, I believe, is going to be the bigger guy. If I'm not mistaken, from what I knew about Pirrello going into the UFC, is that he cut a lot of weight to get down to 135. He fought his last fight, since obviously the De Silva loss, at 145. I thought, again, it would really help him. I think it's going to help him really, obviously, eat damage, be the more physical guy, be the stronger guy, obviously going up in weight. And he's bigger than Liga as well. He's going to have about 2 or 3 inches of height on the guy. So I'm going to go with Gaetano Pirrello to pick up the victory by unanimous decision. Again, Liga, yes, you can look at the record and say 5-0. It's not a good 5-0. So I'm going to go Gaetano Pirrello to win the fight. Let's move on now to the lightweight division, as we've got a matchup here between Nicolas DeFranco taking on Catlin Safta. Okay. DeFranco 10-4-1 professionally, fighting out of Belgium and from Belgium. Last fight was a loss back in December of 2024. But his opponent here in the Swiss fighter, Catlin Aquaman Safta, not that great. 6-3 guy. Lost to Patrick Habirora back in 2024, obviously is in the main event. Lost to Sebastian DeFranco, who has fought in PFL Europe before, lost to Connor Hughes earlier this year. It's just a guy who I think we've seen him against higher level opponents and he's lost. I'm not telling you Nicolas DeFranco is some world beater, because again, has not had the best past either. I think Safta's kind of just, I think he's a can. I'm just gonna be honest. I think he's a can. I know what PFL does. They're in Belgium. They want as much Belgium talent to win as possible, right? I mean, we've just detailed it before, right? I think that Ibragimov is going to win in his hometown, our home country. I think Abaev is going to win in his home country. I mean, again, the fight between Pirrello and Liga, there has to be a Belgian winner, but same thing here. I think they want Belgium to win, so they're going to give DeFranco a favorable matchup. I think he's going to win the fight. He has lost his last one. He lost by Secker on TKO to a 5-2, now 7-2 Noah Gugan, who has fought in Bellator a long time ago, back in 2023. But yeah, I think DeFranco is going to pick up the win. He hasn't beaten anybody all that spectacular, but at the same time, Safta hasn't either. So if you're thinking about betting on this fight, don't do it. There's just a lot of random variables here. I believe DeFranco's going up in weight. I think Safta's going down in weight. So we'll see how that ends up. But again, if all else, let me just think about, all right, who's from Belgium? Who does the PFL want to win? Because again, we've seen the PFL do this so many times. They will give guys they want to win favorable matchups. They just will. Didn't work for Baggio Ali Walsh in his last fight. But I think DeFranco is going to pick up the victory. I'm going to take him to win, likely by unanimous decision. Let's go on to our next one here in the featherweight division. We've got Ibragimov taking on Matthias Jurgen. This is a good one because, I think Ibragimov is going to win. I'll give it away. But this is a somewhat difficult test, I think. I don't really know if it is. It is. Even though Ibragimov's last 2 wins over Ignacio Campos and Mohakana, I always butcher buddy's name, Kenny, Ibragimov is now at 9-0 professionally. This is a guy who's got really good wrestling. He's a Dagestani, training out of England now, so it's really good sambo. He can kickbox too. Matthias Jurgen, 1 win the PFL to over a 2-4-1 Yassine Chateau. I don't know why the PFL made that fight, but PFL is confusing sometimes, right? It's an interesting one. It is. Because, again, Jurgen has won before. He's a 4-0 guy. I just think it's too much. Just because I do think Ibragimov is somewhat of a highly touted guy the PFL has. He's 3-0, right? You date back, actually, to his first victory back in 2024 over Josh Reed by first-round sub. And sure, his last 2 wins have both been by decision. But this is a guy who's going to pressure you on the ground, obviously, with that pace. Dagestani wrestling, and he's not a horrible kickboxer either. But obviously, again, his entire game is centered around the grappling. On top of that, this guy Ibragimov just turned 21 years of age. Yep, just turned 21 last month, and he's already had 9 professional fights. I mean, that's kind of just the pathway a lot of these guys go down. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying like this is their lives. This is what they do. They are from birth. They are mixed martial arts fighters. Ibragimov's been nothing but great so far in his career. I would expect more of the same here. I'm going to go with him to actually get a submission victory. I'm going to go Ibragimov second round sub. I know, again, Jurgen is an undefeated guy. He's been an 0-0, 3-1, 2-0, and a 2-4-1 fighter. And he's been submitted 3 times on the amateur scene. Sure, again, that's amateur fights, doesn't really matter. But when he's only had 4 pro fights, I do think it's somewhat applicable. All right, look at what he's done in the regional scene. Got sub 4 times. Ibragimov is undefeated, both amateur and professionally, combined at 15-0. I think he goes out there and picks up a submission win here over the French fighter in Matthias Jurgen. So give me Ibragimov to win the fight by second round sub. We move on now to the light heavyweight division. This is just one of the fights that makes you scratch your head. Because it is Boris Mabara Atanga taking on Bruno Santos. When I was trying to find a picture for Bruno Santos to put on the graphic, I couldn't find one. Because obviously there has been a Bruno Santos in the UFC in the past, and there's just like 20 Bruno Santoses who fight mixed martial arts. And it's not like this Bruno Santos is all that popular. He's 3-3 professionally. Again, another one of those fights that just makes you scratch your head. He's 3-3 professionally. He lost his last fight to a 7-7 guy. 2 fights ago, he lost to a guy making their pro debut, but that was only back in 2018. So he returned in 2024, beat a 1-0 fighter, 1-4 fighter, excuse me, and then lost to a 7-7 fighter. Where do they find these guys? It's not like he is a Belgian talent. The Belgian talent actually is his opponent. So Bruno Santos is 3-3. You know why they made this fight? Because he's going out there to get slaughtered. He's been knocked out twice in his career. No fight of his has ever seen the scorecards. And he's 3-3. So sure, 100% finish rate, but 100% finished rate at the same time. For Boris Mabara Atanga, this is a guy who has been fighting in KOF, which is the king of the fighters. He has been he's been multiple main events over there. He was their world champion. Now getting the shot here with the PFL. This is an all-action type of guy. This is a guy who's going to chase a knockout. He's going to go out there and try to finish you. I think it's a really good get for them, honestly. And I think it's a guy as well, again, fighting in his home country. He's expected to go out here and pick up a good result. And I think he does exactly that. I'm going to take the Belgian fighter here in Boris Mabara Atanga to knock out Bruno Santos in the first. He's got a 100% finish rate in his own right. Again, heavy hands at 205. Just the all-around better guy. And exactly, I mean, you look at a home talent from Belgium, the second highest Belgian talent on the card, obviously, other than Habirora, who's in the main event. And Bruno Santos is 3-3, and he's been knocked out twice already. And he just lost to a 7-7 fighter. By the way, Atanga does not have a bad ground game either. So everything points to Atanga winning. He's going to do exactly that. Give me the 5-0 undefeated Belgian fighter to win, again, by first round knockout. To our next fight, we move to a matchup. I know you can barely see the names on the screen here, but it's Julian Pierre Lopez taking on Jan Cieplowski. Probably butchered his name, but you've got an 8-0 fighter here, and Cieplowski, who's coming off a split decision win over a 9-1 Vitaly Yamenko. But an undefeated guy with some really good results recently coming out the fight exclusive night promotion over in Poland. His opponent in Julian Pierre Lopez has fought in the PFL before, picked up a victory against Dominique Wooding. I believe that was last year, yeah. In 2024, win over Dominique Wooding, who's been around the block a couple times, and a loss to Alexander Luster in his last fight in PFL Europe. Again, there's experience here with the French fighter and Pierre Lopez in the PFL. He's 35 years of age. He's had 2 fights here. Lost to a UFC name in Bernardo Sopage back in 2023 by knockout in 20 seconds. They're throwing bro out here to lose. I'm just going to be honest, okay? this is a fight set up for Jan Cieplowski to go out there and win. An undefeated fighter, 8-0, a guy who's got a good enough ground game and a good enough striking game, just an all-around pretty well-balanced guy. I'm a little surprised with the Tapology picks in this one. 96% of voters are going with Jan, and I expect that. 55% are going by knockout. This is a guy who doesn't really finish too many fights. And I get it, Lopez has been finished multiple times. He's been finished in every single fight that he's had. I actually think there is a very good chance he gets subbed here rather than knocked out. Again, that's usually how Cieplowski goes out there and finishes fights. It's with his grappling. And at the same time, Lopez has been knocked out only once and subbed 3 times. I think it's the grappling that actually wins Jan this fight. Again, undefeated guy, 8-0 professionally. I think he goes out there and picks up the win. Some really good victories in his last 4 fights. 5-2 fighter, 7-1, 3-0, 9-1 against split decision in his last fight. However, though, again, still an undefeated name against an older guy in Pierre Lopez, who's 35, who's lost 4 times and has been finished in all 4 of the fights that he has lost. Yeah, that kind of just, to me, equates in a Jan Cieplowski victory. I think the Polish fighter is going to win this one, and I'm going to go second round submission. I'll go first round submission here. Making his PFL debut, I think he goes out there and gets it done. First round sub for Jan Cieplowski. All right, on to our next fight. By the way, that was a tournament fight, so I think Jan goes out there and wins. Okay, another tournament fight here at bantamweight. I'm thinking, I think the Dean Garnett fight actually is a playoff fight, or is it a tournament fight? I just don't know why it's that low on the card. Weird. Anyways, our next tournament playoff fight in the bantamweight division, we have got Anas Azizoun, taking on Gustavo Oliveira. We got France versus Portugal here. Should be interesting. The French fighter in Anas is 5-1. Oliveira 10-2 professionally. Oliveira has fought in karate combat recently. He's taken pro Muay Thai fights. I'll be honest, his MMA run isn't the most impressive. It just isn't. He's coming off a win over a different Bruno Santos, not the guy that we were talking about earlier. Bruno Santos actually just fought Sajakub Karamov in his last fight. Why is no major promotion, PFL, taken Karamov yet? He should have really never got cut from the UFC. He's only lost to Said Nurmagomedov. He fought in PFL way back when and lost to Umar Nurmagomedov. Yeah, why isn't the PFL taking Karamov back? He just beat Alex Caceres in a custom rules fight. He's 12-3. Yeah, Karamov, or as we used to call him, Rachmanov. Yeah, I don't know why Karamov hasn't been signed. Anyways, I look at Anas here, 5-1 guy, has not fought in the PFL yet, and you look at his record and look at his strength of schedule, he hasn't beaten anybody. And sure, that's the case for a lot of PFL Europe fighters, but what, an 0-1 win, 0-1, 5-1, sure, 5-2, 1-0. In his last fight, lost to a 6-1 fighter by body shot a minute into the fight. Gustavo Oliveira is a guy who's going to present problems on the feet for Anas, and that's where I think Anas leaves some to be desired. And sure, Gustavo Oliveira has beaten a bunch of cans, but he has fought some decent fighters at the same time. He has lost to Felipe Lima, who let us all down against Peyton Talbot the other day, so Franco lives to fight another day. But anyways, I do think Gustavo Oliveira wins. I think he's the way better kickboxer, and I do think his striking is going to present some problems for Anas in this one. So I'm going to take Gustavo Oliveira to move on to the next round here of the PFL Europe tournament, and I think he's going to get this one done by knockout. I'm going to go first round knockout here for Gustavo Oliveira. Again, I just think there is a difference on the feet. Anas is the way taller fighter, don't get me wrong. He's 6 feet tall. Gustavo Oliveira is 5'8". I still think Oliveira goes out there and picks up the win. I'm going with him by first round TKO. Let's move on now to our next bantamweight, our last bantamweight tournament fight, because our co-main and our main events are not related to the tournament at all. So the final playoff fight here is Mahio Campanella taking on the Irish fighter and Matisse Zaharovs. You got 7-1 here out of Mahio from France, again taking on Matthias, who is 7-3. For Matthias, this is a guy who's fought in PFL Europe before. Last year had 2 fights, lost to Lewis McGrill and Evans, and then beat Brian Heislop in his next fight by second round sub. He is a former Brave fighter, fighting 4 times over there, losing 2 of those fights. Then went on to fight in Anthony Pettis FC, won a fight over there, beat an 0-5 fighter in Clan Wars 2 while we're at it. But this is definitely a guy with some experience. Mahio Campanella, though, a 1-0 fighter in PFL Europe, beating Ezubar Bosadia last year on the championships card by first-round submission. His only loss of his pro career is against, I guess, current PFL fighter in Frederic Dupois, who lost earlier this year to Gabriel Braga. Campanella is not bad, and he's going to have an advantage on the ground. I can basically just detail you how this fight I think is going to work. If Campanella can get a takedown, he's going to win, because I do think he's got the better grappling. I understand Matthias' last win was by sub. He is, though, a primary striker, and he's a guy, if he can get the fight on the feet against Campanella, he's going to see success. But on the flip side, again, if Mahio is able to get the fight down, he should win. So, basically, my prediction just bases around that fact. It's a grappler versus a striker. Who do we think is going to win? I believe the grappler is going to win. Again, this is a guy whose only loss ever is to Frederic Dupois back in 2023. Again, Dupois at his best is not a bad grappler. I know, again, Braga subbed him, but we'll forget about that. Dupois was a guy coming into the Braga fight who was 8-0 with 8 submissions. So, I don't really hold that loss for Mahio in that bad of a regard. I don't know if that was right English. That was the right way of saying that. Anyways, 4 consecutive wins, beating a 3-2 fighter, being a 4-1 fighter, 2-1, and then 7-3 Barossa in his last fight in PFL Europe. I'm going to take him to win. I think he out-grapples Matas Zaharovs in this fight, and I do believe, right, Campanella is going to be able to win this one by first-round submission. We move on now to the co-main event. A good fight in the bantamweight division. A good fight. Taylor Lapilus taking on Ali Taleb. So Ali Taleb has been around PFL for a while. He made his PFL debut back in 2022 on the PFL playoffs card when the PFL took their playoff cards to Europe, all but one of them. Anyways, that's where we got introduced to the undefeated Ali Taleb, who was coming off a victory at the time against Vinicius Oliveira, and that's huge because to this day, that is actually Oliveira's last loss. He's a guy who's undefeated in the UFC 3-0, won 5 consecutive fights after losing to Ali Taleb. That's a huge victory. Taleb finished him in the 3rd. Taleb, after that fight, goes on, wins in PFL, beats Oliveira, right? Wins 2 fights in PFL, gets to the second round of the PFL Europe tournament in 2023, runs into the eventual champion in Khurshred Kaharov, loses the fight by decision, goes to PFL MENA last year. He, I guess, kind of gets demoted after losing in PFL Europe, wins 3 fights, beating Nawaz Azbak, beating Jalal Al-Daja, and beating Rashid Haas in the championship fight by first round knockout to make his way now back to PFL Europe. And my goodness, have they given him a fight. Taylor Lapilus. Wow. I think I know who PFL wants to win. Can he beat Lapilus, though? Lapilus is good, guys. I don't know why he got cut from the UFC. I think I know. It's because he wasn't the most entertaining. Doesn't really chase the finish, but is just a good enough fighter who is good enough to win fights and just outpoint guys. That's what Lapilus did in his first UFC run. He got cut. Did it again in his second UFC run. He went 3-1 in his second stint in the UFC. He was the reigning Aries FC champion. It was a move that I was kind of waiting for when the UFC went back to France the second time, I believe. Was that their second card? The Gon Spivak card? Yeah, because Gon Tuivasa was the first one. Anyways, beats Con Lafren by unanimous decision. Kind of a fun fight, kinda. Lafren really playing up the crowd. Lapilus wins at home. Fans are really behind it. Then he gets booked in an Apex card, loses to Farid Basharat. Here's what it is. Beats Cody Stamann, beats Vince Morales in his last fight. I get it, Morales is not that high level. Stamann's at the end of his run. You cut the guy, though? You know, I don't know. I guess his contract expired, maybe. So Lapilus now not fighting in France like originally supposed to, because that first fight against Taleb was supposed to be in France on the original Barnoy-Colgan card. They ended up fighting, of course, in the States, and Colgan won. He's going to fight Usman, I guess. I don't know what's happened to Paul Hughes, but I don't know. Should have gone to the UFC. Anyways, Lapilus now is going to get Taleb in Belgium. I think there's a pathway for Ali Taleb to win 100%. Again, he's beaten good fighters before. But when he did fight Zaharovs, he lost. Do you think Taylor Lapilus is better than Zaharovs? Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I mean, again, this is a guy who's got good enough striking, good enough grappling. Like, again, just wherever Lapilus has the fight, he's usually good enough to win. Again, that last run in the UFC was pretty good. Again, the grappling, I think, left a little bit to be desired, but he just fought really... I mean, I'm looking at the free Bashaw fight, obviously, right? Obviously, Lapilus is not going to be a guy who's going to chase the takedown himself, but defensively, I think he's able to keep the fight standing. And that's if Taleb shoots, which I don't think so. I think we're just going to see a striking fight. Lapilus is a tough guy to put away. He's never been knocked out in 25 professional fights. And sure, that's what Taleb does. Lapilus has a good chin, and Lapilus has fought really good strikers, and he's been fine against them. Now, again, the last 2 fights in the UFC run, like, is Vince Morales better than Ali Taleb right now? I'm going to say no, actually. Cody Stamann, a different stylistic fight, but Stamann tried to take Lapilus down. He wins it, obviously, by stuffing the takedown, just outstriking Stamann. Lapilus' pathway to victory, again, is just to out-volume Taleb. And I think if he gets this fight deeper into the fight, I think Taleb's going to really go for it early. But if he's not able to go out there and put away Lapilus early, I think he's going to lose. So I'm going to take Taylor Lapilus from France to beat Ali Taleb. I think it's a good step up for Taleb. I think if the fight's anywhere close, I think they're going to give the decision to Taleb. But I think Lapilus is going to just kind of show there's levels in the fight in the second and the third round. So I'm going to go Taylor Lapilus to beat Ali Taleb by unanimous decision. If I didn't give, I don't know if I gave a pathway to victory for the last fight. I'm going Campanella, by the way, by decision. That was the fight prior to this. But yeah, I'm going to go Taylor Lapilus to win this fight by decision against Ali Taleb. I just think he's better on the feet. Doesn't hold as much power, don't get me wrong, as Taleb does. Taleb does have more power than the guy. I think he's either able to weather the storm and just out-volume Taleb for the rest of the fight. Okay, main event time. I guess the man in which this card was built around, Patrick Habirora, takes on Danny Roberts. I believe this is Danny Roberts' first fight after getting cut from the UFC. It is. He's supposed to fight Neiman Gracie in the GFL. Remember when the GFL was supposed to happen? I was so excited. It's never going to happen. But Danny Roberts had a long run in the UFC. Had 14 fights over there. Made his UFC debut back in 2015. Lost 3 consecutive fights to Francisco Trinaldo, Jack Della Maddalena, and Johnny Parsons. He gets cut from the UFC, and now here he is in the PFL. The PFL is using Danny Roberts as a stepping stone and just another guy on the record of Patrick Habirora. That's exactly what's happening here. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know why they didn't have Habirora fight earlier this year in PFL Europe. Because he beat his last fight's against an 0-2 fighter, Dima Glevka in FAF. Like, why? I don't know. Habirora's only win in PFL Europe. I kind of felt like I feel like he's been in PFL for longer. He's only had 1 win over there. And it's a win over Catlin Safta, who, again, we saw earlier on in the video. What Habirora brings, though, is heavy hands. And he's an up-and-coming guy. And I understand. He hasn't fought the highest of competition yet. But he's kind of just ran right through everyone they've given him. Oh, no, Habirora fought Pasella. He did. Okay, he fought Claudio Pasella back in 2024 as well. And that's a good victory. Pasella won his first fight earlier this year against Gavin Hughes. That's a guy who's fought really well last year in the PFL. Like, yeah, that's a really good win. And that's early in Pacella's career. Pasella was 3-1. He's, 6-2 now? You know? So Habirora is talented. And he's a guy where I look at his past and I look at the fact that, okay, he hasn't beaten big-name fighters. That's fine. He just hasn't been afforded that opportunity yet. Because in every fight that he's had prior, or just prior to this fight, he has ran right through his opponents. He's finished them pretty easily without that much trouble. Danny Roberts, guys, who, sure, at one point in time was UFC level. That's fair. He's 37, about to turn 38 next week. And he hasn't fought since 2023. He hasn't won a fight since his split decision victory over Ramzan Ameev back in 2021. A fight that I don't really know if he won. It was a close fight, and Ameev probably should have got the nod, right? It's been a while since Danny Roberts has won a fight. So now again, you're 37. You're not getting any younger. You got knocked out in your last 2 fights in the UFC against Jack Della and against Johnny Parsons, obviously, right? JDM, now the world champion. But even prior to that, it got knocked out against Nordine Taleb in the UFC. Michel Pereira knocked him out with the flying knee. And I know Mike Perry back in 2016 as well. We are getting into pre-COVID fights there. But this is a guy who's always had kind of a chinny past. He's a guy who's always, been chinned. Let's just be honest. I think it really sets up for Patrick Habirora to win and look really good in doing so. Because sure, Roberts is going to offer something back. The difference is he's not going to be able to take the punches that Habirora is going to throw. Because Habirora throws hard. And sure, Roberts might land on Habirora. I just don't think it's going to really work. And I just don't think he's going to be able to take the shots that Habirora throws at him. Right? The PFL knows what they're doing here. They got a former UFC fighter who has somewhat of a name. He's an English fighter, obviously, a British fighter. Has somewhat of a name. They're having him take on their young up-and-coming star in their young up-and-coming star's home country in Belgium, in their first ever card in Belgium. I wonder what's going to happen. Going Patrick Habirora to win the fight by first round knockout. 85% of voters are going with him to win on Tapology for good reason. I think Habirora gets it done. Again, Roberts has always been a guy who's been susceptible of getting knocked out. He's been knocked down in his last 2. He's about to turn 38 years of age. Just doesn't really all add up well for him, I'm going to be honest with you. Habirora is better, especially at both points of their careers right now. I'm going Patrick Habirora to win the fight by first round knockout. So folks, that does it for our PFL Europe to Brussels predictions here on the channel. If you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do just great thing the picks. Folks, thank y'all for watching. We'll be back next week for our UFC Nashville full card predictions. Derek Lewis, Taliesin Teixeira in the main event. Make sure to join us for that on Sunday, or Saturday, actually. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.